Hello, I'm Craig Constantine. Welcome to Pod Talk, short conversations with indie podcasters that are not just about podcasting, because I like to take the scenic route. My guest today is Karen Morgan. Welcome, Karen. How are you this afternoon? Craig looks at the clock. Where am I in the planet?
Where are we? What are we doing? How much smoke is coming to kill us from
I was
Canada?
going to say I happen to know where you are. You're over in that green part of the country right now.
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
on. You have still have air. We
yeah.
have air, but we're not opening our doors much.
We're in
Yeah,
sort of the light tangerine area.
I'm in fuchsia.
Yeah, we're like more like a sunny D. It's a sunny
Uh,
delight kind of day.
Thanks a lot, Canada. No, in all
Yeah.
honesty, I really feel sorry. I hope
Oh,
your fires go out soon. I feel bad for people. I
yeah.
I went to Seattle last year, and as we came in on the plane, I had a window seat, and I was like, "What is going on?" I'm like a fluid mechanics physics nerd. You could just see all the smoke from the fires.
Oh
When I got off the
no.
plane, it got real, and like that really was an eye opener. Like, oh, the air is trying to kill
Yeah.
us now. So
Yeah.
that not good.
Yeah.
Um,
Yes. Something
what a
we might need.
downer.
Little,
What a downer. I'm
little
sorry.
Gatsby might need it.
I tried to make a joke about rainbow colors on maps and ended up talking about horrible climate and
We
smoke.
went right down,
Right
dark
down
deep
the
and down real
yeah.
fast.
Well, it's our generation, right?
Yeah, it's good. No, but we are the luckiest generation, I
I
think.
I think so. I was
Yeah.
really happy every time my key worked when I came home as a kid.
Yeah.
Yay!
Pull it right. Did you have one on a string or did you have one, like, hidden? We had ours
Mine was
hidden.
hidden. Mine was
Yeah.
hidden. I had one of those little coin purses, the little the rubbery
Yeah,
plastic
the
thing,
one
and
that
you
was like that.
squeezed it and the mouth open. It had
Yeah.
my change for buying my lunch, and I could
Nice.
jam my key in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But don't get your finger cut on it, because if you get your
It's pretty
fingernail,
sharp.
cut it right off.
Yeah, yeah, thing's pretty tough. Um, yeah. Mhm. So Karen Morgan is a comedian, a stand-up comedian, and half of that we just did was kind of like making jokes about her latest skits. I mean, I'll just put this right here. If you're listening, just hit stop because this is not funny. You need to go listen to Karen Morgan. Go to KarenMorgan.com. When last I looked, hopefully, let's see how long this podcast was. When last I looked, there was a great video up there where she was doing a latest skit, which is all about intergenerational conflict. My wording, not hers. But we happen to be the same generation, so we're kind of making inside jokes. Okay, it's a podcast. I'm supposed to be having a conversation, so I probably should ask you a question. Before we hit the big, oddly blue button, I was asking you about process. So
Mhm.
I'm sure everybody asks you, like, where do you get your jokes from? Blah, 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 blah. But I'm always worried as a podcaster, I'm always worried about filing off too many of the edges. Like I go around looking for things. I don't want to do this part, skip this part.
Right.
And I'm wondering, I would say you are much further along in your comedy journey than I am in my podcasting journey. So I'm like, hey, from your experience having filed off a lot of edges and
Right.
kept edges, what are some things maybe that you think are like, it doesn't have to be like applicable directly to podcasting, but like what are
Right.
things that you keep that are still the schlag? Oh, remember that? That are still the schlaggy parts
Yes.
that you keep because you know that's the real part that I need to do.
Right. Well, it's interesting, 'cause you and I were talking about to me, the writing process is really why I continue to be interested in stand up. It's because of the writing process.
Hmm.
And I am not a set up punchline joke teller like some comics are. I'm not that kind of I start out with a story. And because I was raised in the South, my stories are long and they're weaving and they go everywhere. So when I start writing a bit, it is super long. It's pages long, absolute pages long. It's too long. And so in order to start shaving off that, you have to get in front of an audience to see, okay, where did they really laugh?
Hmm.
What hit with them? What kind of point in that story do they really like? And so I audio record all my sets when I'm doing, particularly when I'm starting out with new material, to know, okay, that sounded great, and or occasionally, sometimes I will come up with a new words that don't have on my paper that
Who said that?
magically
Right.
happened. Like, wait a minute, and then sometimes those words are actually funnier than what I wrote down. So you start with this sort of long piece of artwork. I'm going to call it artwork, and then or
Yeah, that's a good
sculpture.
word.
And then you do start whittling it away. You start whittling away to it's a little more detailed, it's a little more refined, it's a little more, focused. Um, and I try really hard. Again, I'm still never going to be a setup punchline joke person. I'm going to still be a storyteller, but I will edit my stories so that they're shorter and they just have punchlines throughout the
Hmm.
story.
How
Um,
do you hear? So I'm guilty, Your Honor. I tend to not listen to my own work as much as I should.
yeah,
But when I'm not often, but when I'm called and then I go, but wait, I have an excuse. It's because I actually can't tell if it worked. So if
yeah,
I do a podcast recording with you, unless I happen to run into somebody or talk to somebody, which
right,
does
right,
happen,
right,
I don't get any feedback on it. So
right.
so if you're listening to the recording of your work, I'm guessing it's pretty clear because you'd be able to hear it. You'd be able to hear how the audience
Yeah,
responded, and you have the because it's performative in front of a group.
exactly.
Um, but I still feel like, how do you hear? And I'm stopping on that word because it's odd.
Yeah.
What you've said in a
Mhm.
fresh way, like, doesn't it all just sound like, oh my God, it's just me? Like I hear myself and I go, oh my God, it's me. That's not
It's
funny. I
my
don't want to hear
voice,
that
it's
anymore.
my voice, it's my voice. Well,
Yeah.
so I want to address quickly the first part of what you said, because when I did my podcast that I'm not actively doing now, it was host on mic, just me. I recorded it, did all this stuff. I love doing it, but it was in such a vacuum, and then you put it out there, and then I don't think I really I would like listen to it once before it went out to make sure there was nothing really horribly wrong with it, and then I would listen to it again. So I was missing, I was
Sorry.
missing like what you get with a live audience is an energy exchange.
Hmm.
This is why when during the pandemic and we had comedy shows over Zoom, I wanted
Oh,
to poke my eyeballs out. I it was the worst experience ever, and so you could see their little faces in their little squares, right? You kinda hope that some of them were laughing, but sometimes their sounds was off, so you couldn't tell. I did 1 hour of comedy in webinar mode where I could not see or hear anyone.
oh my goodness.
And I will tell you, I got paid quite well, and that's the only reason I did it. It was, like, some corporate thing. I did that hour, and then I went in the next room and laid down in the kitchen floor and just it was catatonic for, like, the next 5 hours because it just sucked every bit of energy. When you have a live audience, you get an exchange back. They give you energy back. So, I can tell when I'm listening to new stuff and I'm editing, there's an energy exchange there where they really get it and they love it and it goes on for a little bit. It may not be complete like total laughter by everybody in the room, but you get an energy and you just I have a sixth sense to it now. I'm like, okay, I wish there's sometimes I think they're going to laugh at one part, but then they laugh at something else harder.
Hmm,
And so that's when I know, okay, do that one first or save that one for last,
hmm,
But there's an energy exchange in addition to sort of the hearing part of it. You get a feel to it. Um, it's also I have recorded something that I was there for. So it's like I was live in the room and I do have a bit of memory. Sometimes I just do it in the car on the way home, so it's really fresh.
hmm.
Um, but
Um, Karen has a podcast. Let's do that. So,
okay,
Karen's podcast is called The Purple Bike. Did I get it
correct.
right?
The
Yes.
purple bike.
And I'm not going to let the cat out of the bag. I always have the urge to unpack things. Like, does everybody know where that comes from? It's a sailing metaphor. Anyway, um, but yeah, no, just go listen to it. It's host on mic, and it's not comedy, and it's really good, I think. And
Yeah.
I wanted to point out that you have that show. And does it have its own domain name?
I think it's thepurplebike.com.
I think it's
I think
thepurplebike.com
it's
as well,
or
but I
it
was
might
hoping you
it
would
might
know.
it might even be purplebike.com because I think at some point I acquired that during the during
Hmm.
the process. But I have to tell people it's not funny. Like, it's entertaining and it's fun, but it's not meant to be comedy.
Hmm.
So people sometimes are confused when they go over there and like, "Oh, this." I'm like,
Well,
"Oh,
I wanted to point it out because when you were talking about energy exchange in your comedy work, I wanted to like hit a big like, "Ooh, everybody pay attention to that," because almost everything that everybody does in podcasting, we have no feedback. Like you and I get feedback from each other here in this conversation,
right."
But anybody doing host on mic, you get no feedback. So this is exhausting. And
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
not that it should be, but that's the nature of.
Well, it is exhausting because it is your energy is pouring out. Your creativity
Yeah.
is pouring out, and you do have to it does I don't wanna say it doesn't suck the life out of you, but it there's a drain and, I enjoy the creative process doing my podcast. I really got a kick out of that, like the creating part.
Mm.
But then it goes into the vacuum and like, unless you're on top of people commenting and following you and all that stuff, and that's a separate, community
Uh,
building kind of thing, which I quite honestly that part was like I enjoy the creating part of it part
yeah.
rather than the let me build my community. And I don't know, my community is around, but they're listening to comedy more than my podcast.
Mm. Uh, what do you do when you completely blank on stage? No, 'cause I had an idea and it floated away from me.
That's when your brain kicks in. Oh, we
uh,
were talking about that earlier, but my brain your brain
Dance
works
monkey. Um,
different things.
what do you find? I did it again. I had it and then I lost it
I'm
again.
sorry, I interrupted you.
No, that's perfectly cool. Oh, I know what I wanted to ask. Um, if you okay, here's a problem I've been having. I recently started doing voiceovers for some little articles that I've been writing, just
Mhm.
mostly because I wanted to practice talking for more than 3 seconds or whatever. And I found that it's like really different. See, Craig, learn. There's a hashtag for this. It's really different the way that I communicate when I'm just talking and being animated
Yeah,
and written prose. So, how did you learn? I'm assuming you've learned by now. How
yeah.
did you learn how to get from, oh, I have a cool story or something funny that, and then like you write it down,
Mhm.
maybe in cursive, and then how do you get that up on stage and like do the like have Karen
Yeah,
emote it?
in real life, as they say.
Yeah.
Well, because and part of it, but because I was a trial attorney, I write in a very correct, grammatically correct with all the Oxford commas, you
Oxford
know,
commas, right? Yeah.
and so I kind of if you get most people will get an email from me and they think I'm yelling at them because it's just how I write emails. Like I just they're like, so
I
I'm
think
not like
grammar matters. Thank you. Thank
grammar
you both for
matters.
the emails that are grammatically correct, and thank you very much.
It does.
Right.
But so I will write it and then and what happens is too, you write it and then once you start talking, it becomes a different thing, which is why it's so important to record the audio because that's really when the natural organic speech patterns emerge.
Right.
And then the feedback from the audience comes at that point too. A lot of times I have people come up to me after shows and I'm writing on something new and they're like, "Oh, what about so and so? What about so and so?" And that's why
Hmm.
that generations bit just keeps getting longer because after every show, like the change purse,
I
man,
did it.
that's
I'm
going in.
sorry.
Your no, but your change purse is going in there somewhere. I forgot about that little rubber change purse. But we all had one.
Yeah.
I had the little bank logo on it or something.
Hmm.
So, I don't know if I answered your question, but I write it out on a piece of paper. I write I'll give you the specifics. I write it in cursive on a legal pad with a with a here,
I'm laughing. Gen Z,
with a
you can look up cursive on
yeah,
Wikipedia.
with a flare pen. So I start writing with a flare pen.
Oh.
I'm big paper. I'm still a paper pen person.
I'm holding a piece of. We're both
Yeah.
holding stuff up to the video. Everybody see this? I'm holding. Karen, there's no video. It's
My
an audio
pen.
show. See
Where's
this?
my
Yeah. No, I actually have a piece of paper has a checklist on it and a big blank space. See, this is where you can tell you're entertaining me because I'm not taking any notes.
I'm not having to write during your day. But I like I literally like the writing, physical writing
Mm,
process. And
I
then
agree. I agree.
I will do that and then I will type it after that. I will type it on
Ooh.
a Word document. And then I will take it and perform it on my feet. And then I will come back with the piece of paper that's typed and the audio thing and then I'll compare how badly I
How off script you were.
that was bad. And then I mesh them together. And then that's when I start Xing things out. Like this whole section, I don't need. This whole section, I
Mm.
don't need. This section should be moved up here. And this takes, by the way, years to get some bits where you want them.
Do
this
you
process.
I'm wondering, do you actually use what you've written, like the physical artifact, do you
Mhm.
actually use that to practice? Or I'm wondering if the act of, so you're shaking your head, no, the act of doing all of that,
Yeah.
like sometimes I think, so I used to have a production assistant who traveled with me and I did a whole bunch of in-person recordings. And we had this after a couple of them, like, okay, here's how this works. There's a period of time beforehand where I am, my recording, loading the guest in my head. Do not talk to me about anything else. You can talk to me all you want, but the only thing I'm doing is thinking about this person. So it
Mhm.
feels to me like the act of, for you, physically writing and the physical piece of paper, which you then get out later and make X's on, you're really just training your brain to think a certain way about that story so that when you go like, do it, it happens.
And it's already, and by then, because you've written it and done it so many times, it's in your head. It So when I was in law school, this, and I don't know if this comes from that or not, but when I was in law school, and this I was in law school so long ago, we did not have laptops to take notes on. So I would handwrite all my notes in class, on, I think I had legal pads or whatever, and then I would come home every night and I would type them into my word processor that was
Mhm.
like this
Dedicated
fat,
device the size of a
you know.
typewriter, yeah.
So so the act of physically writing in class and then taking it home and typing it into the machine and then spitting that out again, that was always getting the knowledge in my head, so that by the
Mm,
time I got to an exam, or I'm reviewing for an exam or studying for the bar exam, it's kinda in there, and I feel like that with the comedy process, it's the same, and I would apply it to podcasting or anything else, particularly if you're a podcaster who is interviewing people. You kind of, as you said, you want to be prepped for your guests, so you're not just reading out a list of questions for them. That prep work allows you to have an organic conversation that you're not necessarily looking at your notes for,
right.
or allows your brain to be open to going down different roads in an interview because you're actively listening instead of worrying about what's on a piece of paper. I think that applies to everything.
Yeah. I often talk about conversation. I love to do Meta, not Meta, the company that owns Bookface. Um, I love to do Meta, and for me, that's what I feel like I'm doing beforehand. Is like, okay, I need to have all the touch points, and I need to not drop into trying to do stand up comedy. I need to like have all these frames of like I have to build the spider web so that I can be in the center
Yeah,
and have all the strings at my disposal. And
yeah.
then when Karen gets here, the goal is to just have a conversation, Craig and Karen.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but I think it takes building that before you start with any
That's a
guest.
good point.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
did you feel like when you when you started doing stand-up comedy, um, so for me, I there are parts of what I do in these conversations that I had to really like, oh, I need to work on that. And I had to like figure out ways to like make the situation force me to do that, every time and different things. Were there pieces of stand-up comedy where you were like, I know you really like the writing part, but were there
Mhm.
pieces of it like, oh, what I'm really not good at is I play with my hair on stage, or there, man, like, what are the pieces that were like, yikes, that's a problem, and I'm going to have to actually work that or train that?
Yeah. Yeah, and particularly with new comics, it is a learning curve. Um, I have evolved and have done it different ways over the years. When I first started, like anything, this sounds silly, but what you do, how you deal with a microphone during a stand-up set is very personal. People do it differently. You start
Mm.
watching comics now. Um, I didn't used to do this, but I leave the microphone in the stand, and I will occasionally hang on to the stand, but I will not take the microphone out because I talk with my hands. And
Ah.
so this frees my hands up to tell stories, to act out certain things. So I leave the mic in the stand. That's just my particular style. Um, Sometimes people will take it out and move the mic stand behind them, and then they walk around. And sometimes they walk back and forth like a tiger at the zoo. And at some point, I'm just watching them walk back and forth. I'm not listening to them.
Stop moving. Right.
Yeah. Who was it the other Chris Rock, who I love, his special, he was just marching back and forth, and I'm like, I just like, "Can you just stand still?" Like, and there was I was on a show on Friday, and there was a very, very new comic. She was brand new, and she literally took her her pad on stage and read her jokes. But anyway, I was kind of mentoring her a little bit because she'd never done it before, and we had gone over all this, and then she got up there and she was nervous, and she took the mic out of the mic stand, and then she started marching, and she was marching back and forth, and so there's
Yeah,
certain
but
things like
there's something to be said for what is that? The first rule of Fight Club? Oh, wait, okay. The second rule of Fight Club is if it's your first night at Fight Club, you
yeah,
must fight. Like if you're supposed to be doing stand-up comedy, get on the stage. If you're supposed to be doing host on mic, hit
yeah.
record, hit stop, and then press
Yeah.
publish. And that's
And yeah, and just do it. I mean,
yeah.
and there's a lot to be said for the just doing it part with podcasting as well. It really is.
Mm.
You got all the tools. You just haven't figured out which screwdriver to use.
Talking to the wrong side of the snowball mic. I've seen that one. Yeah. Cool. Anything else top of mind in our waning time together
There
today?
was something I was going to talk about, and it's it's left my brain. It's shot out
Uh,
the other end. It's all good. But and when I first started comedy, like I first started at 20 years ago, and I started doing a comedy workshop. That's how I started to do stand up. And the guy who taught the class is still a good friend of mine. Still, I call on him all the time. If I have new material, I will say, "Hey, I'm going to pay you for an hour to listen to me," and he helps me, say, "Yeah, keep that one. That's
yeah.
all horrible." But his thing was the first night we were in the workshop, and no one had ever done stand up at all. He made everybody stand up and talk into the microphone
Hmm.
that night. The very first night we were there, there was no like. It was like, nope, we're here to do stand up. You're going to stand up. And I think podcasters, when I was learning in my podcasting workshop during the pandemic, um,
Hmm.
I was so intimidated by the equipment and by, which microphone do I get? How do I hook it to my computer? What do
Yeah.
which software do I use? All of those things wrapped up into you just have to talk into the microphone. The rest of it is logistics and technology, which you can figure out. But the part about talking in the microphone or interviewing people, you just got to do it. And then the technology kind of goes away at some point.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
There's a pitfall that I fell into often in the beginning, which is because, before the guest or like if I'm going physically somewhere before I get there, I'm still in the car or whatever, or in the virtual sense before the guest has arrived in the green room. Um, because it's just me, I can just be like, whoa, my brain's going a million miles an hour. And it's all like, I'm way too far in to just be like, hey, what's up? And
yeah,
uh, I'm guessing you have that kind of thing happens too, where you could be like, you spend weeks and weeks and weeks writing, and you're just like way not off in the weeds, but like way down in the trench.
yeah, yeah.
Is that like a problem how do you shift back to, wait, I need to be like much lighter here? Might be a way to describe it so that I can go and do it.
Yeah, I think I look at it like if you're creating artwork, or because I do graphic design too, and let's just say I'm making a poster for my show, and I am all into, well, I want this letter looks crooked, and I'll be into it for an hour, like, and then I'm like, I need to back away. I need to back, like, and I physically get up from my desk and go do something else and come back and stare at it and go,
Hmm.
oh, that looks so much better this way, but I needed to take a break from it. I think that has anything to do any creative project, whether it's writing comedy or performing comedy or podcasting or whatever. If you're doing a creative thing, at some point you need to take a little break, go for a walk, get some fresh air, then come back,
Maybe
get
not today.
smoke, get some smoke into your lungs, and then come back, and you'll see it differently, or you'll hear it differently. And sometimes after a show, I won't listen to my stuff until the next day because
Hmm.
I need a break from it. Like it, it's such an energy drain. Like, oh, I can't physically listen to this with a studious mind. Clearly, right now I'm too tired. So
Hmm.
you got to take a break. Just and yeah, you can get down in the trenches on anything.
Yeah.
Just go for a walk in the smoke.
Oh, all right. Well, as much as I hate to say it in every conversation ever, I think that's a terrific place to stop,
Aw.
Karen. So thank you so much for taking the time.
For crawling out of your smoke-filled, okay? It's all good.
No, but in all seriousness, I hope everybody in Canada is okay. I think it's pretty rural, pretty far off in the mountains, but hopefully it's gonna get better soon. But
I
wow,
think they said it was from lightning. Was that
yeah,
accurate?
I think it's natural
Yeah,
forest fires. I'm just
yeah.
my hope is like, yes, I'm hoping the fire is like in the middle of nowhere. Like
Right,
the
right.
smoke is bad, but it's really
Yeah,
bad when the fire then gets to where people. But anyway, I'm off on a tangent. I'm sorry.
yeah.
I wanted to just say, hey, Karen, thanks so much for taking the time. I know you were super busy and you've been really nice about rescheduling and getting in here. And thank you. I'm glad that we had a chance to talk. Thanks.
No, thank you, and if anybody wants to follow me, not that anybody would want to follow me, I'm pretty boring in real life. So people still, meet me in real life, and they're like, "You really? You do what?" And they like so, but my website's karenmorgan.com, and if you wanna find me on Instagram or Facebook or TikTok or you any of those things that I hate to deal with, you can find me there. It's at Karen Morgan Comedy.
Terrific. Thank you so much.
Thank you.